everyone, and welcome to the Burgess podcast, the show where we are opening up conversations about life at sea, discussing hot topics within the industry, as well as offering mental health support and promoting well-being for crew. We also have our very own in-house recruitment team, so if you or anyone you know is currently looking for a new position, please send your updated CV to recruitment@burgessyachts.com or check out our recruitment posts on Instagram @Burgess Yacht Crew. Welcome back to our series with the Burgess Blue Oceans team. Sadly, Georgina can't be with us today because she's not feeling very well, so hope you feel better soon, Georgina, if you're listening. But in her place, we've got Eva from the Burgess Blue Oceans team, so welcome, Eva. And also Tash from our yacht management department. Tash has recently come off yachts and worked as a chief stew for over 10 years. So we thought it would be a really good, diverse perspective when talking all things sunscreen, which is what today's topic is. So yeah, welcome guys. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to talk about coral bleaching. What causes it, the steps we can each take to help protect these precious ecosystems, and talk about some of the steps that some of you guys are already taking. So just a little background, coral reefs rival rainforests in terms of diversity of wildlife. They support around 25% of all marine life, including hard and soft corals, sponges, crustaceans, fish, sea turtles, so much more. And it's a real treasure trove of biodiversity. But despite their importance, warming waters, pollution, overfishing and coastal developments are killing our coral reefs around the world. So let's just have a chat about the problem first. Coral bleaching is a huge problem, and I read one article which stated that 91% of reefs surveyed on the Great Barrier Reef have been affected by coral bleaching this year alone. Eva, that's massive, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's really enormous, and there are so many different factors that contribute towards coral bleaching. One of the main ones, which people perhaps wouldn't know, is sun cream, and sun cream actually plays a huge part in coral bleaching. Basically, sun creams have a product in them, a chemical called oxybenzone, and this chemical is found in over 3,500 different sun care products. And so when people are at the beach, on a boat, swimming, that product is leaching into our oceans. And there's some mad figure where over 14 tons of sun cream end up in the ocean each year. And it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be by the ocean, even having a shower, having a bath. You could be on a beach spraying sun cream, and the spray gets onto the sand particles, which eventually ends up in the ocean. So it's a massive issue, and it's not just coral, it's fish. It can decrease fertility and reproduction in some fish. Green algae, it can impair growth in photosynthesis. Dolphins, it can accumulate in dolphin tissue and be transferred to their young. So it's a huge issue.
Yeah, no, that's massive. Alex, I know that sunscreen can damage more than just the corals. It also does damage to clothing, decks, fabrics, and even yacht paint systems.
Yeah, exactly. And I wasn't quite aware how damaging it was. So thank you everyone for passing this information on. It's quite fascinating, kind of scary in many ways. But I mean, sunscreen's a kind of a decky worst nightmare, really. It obviously gets everywhere, and you know, guests spray it on themselves, and you always find on the main deck aft an outline of feet or hands or something where people have sprayed it on their feet, but basically directly onto the deck, and it will just sit there. It will just stain. So, you know, you have to sort of scrub the deck. And this is insignificant in compared to the damage to the, you know, marine life, but, it, you know, penetrates the wooden decks. It also sits on paint surfaces. So, you know, you really have to sort of scrub it to wash it off. And I worked on a yacht that had it was a metallic hull. And in order to clean the forward, master windows, you'd have to slide out on a harness. And it was sort of fairly standard procedure, but typically hot days, the crew would lather up with their sun cream and sun cream all over their knees and hands, etc., rub it in, and then slide out. And you wouldn't notice it initially that you were putting sun cream everywhere. But after a period of time, over months, these handprints and fingerprints sort of starting to develop. And it took us a while to work out if it was one particularly grubby decky or what it was. And it transpired that it was actually sun cream. And it had penetrated through the paint. And a paint system on a yacht it's a phenomenal thing. It's got to be enduring, last and against heat and salt and all sorts of harsh conditions. And it's a multi-layered sort of chemical process, really, paint system. So just the fact that the sun cream managed to work its way into that and stain, and we couldn't get it out. The only way to remove it was to literally sand back the paint, start back to almost a filler, and build it back up again. And even then, we weren't sure how deep it had gone in. So it took some serious work to make sure that had gone. So you look at that and you think, goodness, that's doing that to a fairly solid paint system. What's it doing to me when I put it on? And then what's it doing to coral?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does make you think twice, doesn't it? Tash, did you see anything when you were on board yachts, the damage that it did on board?
I think from my side, basically, it's a lot on clothing and also the towels that are used. A lot of the towels that we'd get from the deck would be yellow and they're stained so badly that sometimes they're irreplaceable. So the effects of sunscreen also sort of compounds onto having to replace a lot of things at a high value, and sort of the wastage of uniform and towels and things that are damaged by such a harsh chemical.
Wow. Yeah, that's really worrying. Eva, can coral recover from bleaching?
Yeah, so coral can recover. Basically, coral is covered in tiny creatures called zooanthellae, and it has a symbiotic relationship with these creatures. So the creatures absorb light and use photosynthesis to create food for the coral. But the corals then become stressed because of the harsh chemicals in sun cream and many other factors, like, for instance, climate change, warmer waters. And so it stresses the corals out, and as a result of this, it expels these tiny creatures that relies on the coral. And these tiny creatures sort of provide them with their main source of food and oxygen.
So it will come back, but it just takes time, I guess. It's not something that happens quickly.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that happens quickly, but they very much can recover. And it's mainly sort of heavy tourist destinations where most corals end up tragically starving to death because of the amount of pollution going into the waters, mainly carried on humans.
God, it's tragic, isn't it? But the fact that it can recover, it does fill me with a little bit of hope, which I think we all need when talking about these topics. I think we've said in previous podcasts that we're never going to find the one big solution in one conversation. There isn't one right answer. It's all about taking steps to being better, and what can we do, and what is everyone already doing to counteract this. So let's talk about what solution options there are. I know we've talked about the sunscreen containing the chemical that does the damage. So are there sunscreens available without that chemical?
Yeah, there definitely are sun creams available. Some top tips would be to look for Protect Land and Sea certifications or the Environmental Working Group. You can also sort of try to provide sunscreens on board with good minerals, which are minerals such as zinc oxide, titanium dioxide.
Are they easy to find? Are they is that clearly marked? I mean, Tash, from an interior perspective, is that easy?
Nowadays, it's getting a lot easier. There's a lot of companies out there that are looking to provide eco-friendly options, but it all comes down to what your client would like. And sometimes those ingredients are not necessarily the main focus. A lot of the time, it may be a brand. So you're sort of fighting a little bit with brand versus sustainability and eco. I think it comes down to if you can educate your client or your guests as to the difference between the sunscreens. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. Maybe explaining that chemical sunscreen absorbs UV rays, which should be put on at least 30 minutes before going in the sun, versus mineral sunscreen reflects the rays, which is usually the good minerals, as mentioned, the zinc oxide, which works straight away. So that's a bonus, that the good minerals actually work quicker than the chemical components. So I think it's always a balance between what your client would like and what is good for the environment. But education is always a great way to get around these things, and sometimes even including them into preference sheets if you have charter guests on board, educating them that we have the option or the knowledge that we can supply these products, even if it's not the base product that you have on board, that you can take that extra step to get those items for them.
And I guess maybe if it's explained to them the damage it does to the yacht itself and the towels and the uniforms, that might help convince them.
Agreed. It's always a good step to show the overall picture of what these chemicals are doing to not just the environment of the sea that we're floating in, but the environment that they are trying to maintain an asset as well. So it's it's twofold, but you can only do as much as you can do and try and educate as many people, and that one person that you can change, be it an owner's rep or an owner, for them to start implementing it will make a huge difference.
Yeah. So, Eva, do we have a list of brands that are providing the safer sunscreens, the safer chemical-free products?
Yeah, so there are lots of really good brands out there, and they're advancing at quite a fast pace because I think slowly people are becoming more educated on the topic and how serious it is. A few recommendations would be Back to Nature. That's actually set up by an ex-yachty, so who obviously saw the problem and wanted to do something about it. There are other brands like Sun Tribe, Supergoop, People for Ocean, Badger, Green People, Organi, the list goes on. But there are some great brands that mainly only deal with sun creams in cream formula and not spray, which is a small step and makes a huge difference.
So aerosols are an issue as well, the spray sunscreens.
Yeah, they're a huge issue. And it's basically they're creating a chemical cloud that's being blown into the sea, settles in the sand, eventually gets swept up by the sea or tide. So it's a huge issue.
Wow. So is that something that could be dealt with quite easily on board, or again, is that down to what's available at the time?
Again, it comes down to client request as to whether they want spray or not. But again, education's key, and we have a list of important factors to take into consideration when choosing your sunscreen, which is obviously looking for the vessel that it comes in. There are a lot of recycled and biodegradable products, containers out there nowadays, and especially the aluminium tubes, which is made from an abundant mineral that's 100% recyclable. So a lot of them you'll see now are doing aluminium tubes, and they're packaged quite nicely, which is also an important factor for when you're putting together a sunscreen basket to be left on a deck. So the packaging is very important. I think one thing that people tend to want to do is buy in bulk, saving plastic. The only downfall with that is that sunscreen goes off and it loses its ability to function. And when you're using it on a yacht, on a reflective surface, you really need to make sure that you're protected. The more times you get sunburnt, the higher risk of cancer. So it is very important that your sunscreen is still within date, and especially so when you look at handing down guest sunscreens that are nearly finished to crew, making sure that the crew are still protected and that they haven't been open for too long.
I remember when I was probably a bit more junior crew, I would remove the spray sunscreens from the basket, much to the chief stew's probably frustration when they were put out, just because of the damage it caused and the frustration. So I sort of take them out, hide them, and they normally end up the next day back in the pod again. But I was fortunate enough, one family that I worked for, they were quite conscious of it, and they insisted, particularly when they were on board and they had guests coming to stay, any spray sun cream, they were quite sort of heavy on saying, no, get rid of those. And I think it sort of circles back to what was mentioned earlier, and indeed in a previous podcast. If you can have the owner on board, no pun intended, with the idea of selecting a sun cream that comes sort of with the yacht, we discussed the kind of the water that's made by the yacht potentially, or the bottles that are refill bottles. You can specify in preference sheets for clients and say, this is what we use. You can almost, if you had an owner to say that this is the sun cream we provide and we do it for this reason, and I don't care that you want a particular brand, this is what we provide. Hopefully most clients will say, okay, fine, you know what, that's fine by us. But it needs that one or two or three, I think Tash, as you mentioned before, reps or owners to say, this is it and this is what we're going to provide, and like it or leave it kind of thing.
I think actually it puts us in a really good position to be able to educate people and educate a generation that would never think twice about sun cream having such a huge effect on the environment. There are also you don't have to put something on your body. You could wear a rash vest. You could encourage guests to wear rash vests whilst out on a jet ski instead of putting sun cream on. So there are solutions. There's also some great news. Some countries and regions are now banning sun creams with these harsh chemicals in them. Hawaii has banned them, the US Virgin Islands, Key West, Bonaire. So there's definitely a movement. But it's just raising awareness and making sure people know what to look for and know the sort of damage that can be done. And it's such an easy fix. Well, when you've got those sort of sun creams available to you, which I know is a huge challenge when you're pulling in somewhere and you've got to just run to the nearest supermarket and grab what you can find. It's easier said than done, but I think if we all sort of know a bit more about it, we can do our bit to educate.
Yeah, it's like you said earlier, it's awareness, isn't it? If there are, I didn't know that sunscreen was such an issue, but if we are spreading that message to people, and it's just about baby steps, it's just about thinking about what we do, and we can't all make all these changes all at once, but even if we can convince one charter to change sunscreen, then that's to something more environmentally friendly, then that is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
So in terms, obviously, like one of the issues that I find personally is it's really hard to find what products are good for the environment. That whole checking labels and checking websites, etc. It can be a bit of a faff, if truth be told. But so is there a website that crew can go to that will give them a quick list of sunscreen products that are environmentally friendly?
I think we're lucky in the yachting industry to have such amazing provisioners out there, and we rely on them a lot when we can't find things that we need. So we do have, and I have come across an amazing list on Blue Ocean Yacht Supplies, which is has an incredible eco-friendly sunscreen list. So just having that in your back pocket when you get into a supermarket or a pharmacy in a country that you don't speak the language, at least you kind of know what direction you're heading as you pick up branded items. But you also have these great companies out there now which are set up on the backbones of being eco-friendly and supply to all the yachts out there that require eco-friendly sunscreen.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. That's good. Is that something that we can share to the yachts?
Yes, so the website is www.blueoceanyachtsupplies.com, and it's a very easy website to use and a very, very simple list, which when you're in a hurry is what you need.
That's good to know. Good to know. And yeah, we were talking about preference sheets earlier. That is something that can be looked at in terms of, when you have the guests on board, you can discuss options with them. So unless anyone has got anything else to add, I think we can probably leave it there. Thank you all so much. Obviously, it's back over to you, the crew. If you know of any good sunscreens out there that are safe, if you've had any issues with sunscreen that you want to talk about, let us know what you're doing. Let's share the knowledge amongst us as a community. And yeah, thank you, Eva and Tash, for joining us, and thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.